3 spine-chilling tales of hidden haunts. Discover the terrifying truth behind abandoned places. The night air held a weight, the kind that made every heartbeat echo with dread. Emma Monroe walked home from her shift, passing the old Maplewood Memorial Hospital, its crumbling facade a dark blot against the starlit sky. The wind whispered cruelly through the cracks, carrying whispers of long-forgotten screams. Everyone in Maplewood knew the stories: ghostly figures drifting through hallways, shadowy shapes slipping past broken windows. She quickened her pace, the soft crunch of gravel underfoot punctuating the silence, her heart thumping like a drum echoing through the night. A chill crawled down her spine, and she glanced over her shoulder, half expecting a specter to leer back. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, wrapping around her like a warning. Just as she drew near the familiar corner of Maplewood Avenue, the flickering streetlight cast a fleeting image, a figure darting behind the hospital's shattered entrance. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Was it real, or just her imagination, fueled by the terrifying tales that haunted the town? Moments later, a familiar voice broke the silence. Her mother Sarah's laughter mingled with the sounds of the diner. It was warm and inviting, yet suffocatingly close. Emma felt safety blossom lopsidedly within her, but a creeping unease lingered, shadowing her confidence. The joyous brightness of the diner faded from her mind as a sense of foreboding wrapped heavy around her heart. When she finally pushed through the door at home, the cozy glow of their modest kitchen felt hollow. Sarah, a single mother and waitress, worked tirelessly, pouring love into every meal she served. But the weariness in her eyes after long shifts reflected more than just fatigue. It spoke of worries that went unshared. Those nights, when laughter echoed in their home, couldn't mask the nervous glances Sarah often cast toward their front window. Days passed, blending into nights, until everything shattered like glass on pavement when Emma didn't come home. Panic clawed at Sarah, twisting her stomach into knots. "Emma!" she cried out, her voice a raw whisper in the darkness of Maplewood's streets. "Where are you?" But the silence only deepened, wrapping her in fearful isolation. She clutched Emma's favorite sweater, the fabric warm yet alien against her skin, sparks of terror igniting with every heartbeat. Sarah's heart raced faster as she stormed to the sheriff. The officer's smug shrug sent icy dread coursing through her veins, dismissing her fears like raindrops sliding off a wet umbrella. "Just a runaway, ma'am. Kids do this." "Maybe she's at a friend's house," he offered, an edge of annoyance in his tone as he returned to sipping his coffee. The words stung. Urban legends might coast through conversations, but she sensed something darker festering in the heart of Maplewood, a malevolence bleeding from the very ground beneath her feet. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah had crawled into the past of the old hospital. Each document unveiled the horrors of its dark history. Quirky quirks of the staff turned menacing, tales of pain and locked doors. One by one, they sounded the alarm bells in her mind. Abandonment, human failures, filthy secrets that lingered in the air like smoke. Even the kindest neighbor turned suspicious, every conversation tinged with hidden truths that cut deeper than knives. With fear transforming into brazen determination, Sarah scoured every street of Maplewood. The shadows twisted, flaring with an unnatural pulse. Every friendly face morphed into a grotesque mask under her scrutinizing gaze, protecting something or someone buried deep in their smiles. When she stumbled upon Emma's necklace, its silver glint a stark contradiction to the gloom, it felt like the final thread pulling her to that click of revelation. Reality unraveled, exposing the horrific truth governing Maplewood's stillness. Who could she trust when the shadows became her only allies? Time slipped away as she felt herself being drawn deeper into darkness, the walls of safety narrowing, and with each breath, sanity clenching tighter into its last hopes of restraint. What awaited her in the dimness beyond? The moon hung low and full, casting a ghostly pallor over Maplewood, illuminating clenched fists and the pulsating fear within Sarah's heart. Each step she took felt heavier than the last, as if the very ground was conspiring against her. She was committed now. She wouldn't rest until Emma was back in her arms, or until she discovered the truth hiding in the depths of that forsaken hospital. The rusted chain-link fence surrounding the Maplewood Memorial Hospital loomed ahead. Jagged shadows loomed. Sarah squeezed through the gap, her breath shallow, sensing the weight of countless lost souls pressing upon her shoulders. As she stepped onto the cracked pavement, the silence enveloped her, thick and suffocating. No chirping crickets, no rustling leaves, only the deafening echo of her heartbeat. Drawing a shaky breath, she peered into the dimly lit entrance framed by tattered vines. The air felt heavy, as if time itself stood still. Clawing at residual hope, she stepped inside, half expecting to see a flicker of specters dancing in the gloom. Instead, a stale scent, the odor of decay, long-forgotten memories welcomed her. Each cautious footfall resonated like thunder, sending shivers of trepidation racing down her spine. A dim light flickered down the corridor, beckoning Sarah deeper into the bowels of despair. She had once heard tales of the lower levels where experiments crossed ethical lines, where whispers of suffering danced through the walls. It was all supposed to be legend, but with every step, the oppressive weight of reality pressed relentlessly against her chest. "Emma," she called, her voice trembling. The hollow echo returned, mocking her desperation. Silence stifling and profound, but something shifted in the air. A chill skittered across her skin as shadows fluttered, twisting out of the corners of her vision. She rounded a corner, following the fleeting light deeper into the hell that was once a sanctuary for the suffering. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the stillness, causing Sarah to flinch backward, her heart hammering. "Is anyone there?" she gasped, terror slicing through her resolve. The darkness seemed to pulse in response, and Sarah took a trembling step toward the source of the sound, her instincts torn between fleeing and the instinctual pull to search for her daughter. She moved cautiously through the dark. A broken door lay ajar, revealing a room drenched in shadows. The flickering light emerged from within, and the penetrating silence was thick with expectation. What lay behind that door? Heart racing, she pushed it open further. Inside, remnants of old medical equipment lined the walls, tarnished by time and neglect. Dust motes danced in the beam of light as it revealed a memory from years gone by, a hospital bed, empty but stained, whispering stories of sorrows untold. But then her gaze fell upon something far more startling. A scrap of fabric caught under the edge of the bed. Emma's sweater. Desperation clawed at Sarah. Frantically she knelt, reaching for the fabric that felt tainted with dread. Just as her fingers grazed it, a sound froze her in place. A low, guttural growl rolled from the darkness behind her, twisting her stomach into knots. She spun around, heart pounding like a caged animal. What was prowling in the shadows? Had Emma been here? Was she close? "Emma!" she shouted, but only the hollow echo returned. Fear gripped her as she backed away, inching toward the door. The growl grew louder, vibrating the air around her. Shadows formed shapes, coalescing into something much larger than her mind could fathom. And then, the truth struck her with an icy grip. Desperation had led her too far. But there were things that lurked in this darkness that were far more terrifying than her worst nightmares. A figure loomed just beyond the flickering light, its eyes shining with an unnatural glow. She stumbled back, breath hitching. What had she awakened? The air thickened with tension as the creature stepped forward. A grotesque figure that belonged in a horror story. Yet here it was, and here was Sarah, heart racing with unspeakable dread. Would she face it, or find some way to flee? As icy fingers clawed at her sanity, the urge to run blossomed only to be silenced by the chilling realization. The shadows weren't merely after her, they hungered for something deeper. Something human. She readied herself, bracing for a fight as the darkness surged forward, swallowing the light whole. What would be left of her if it won? Would she ever find Emma? Before she could answer, the world around her erupted in chaos, and Sarah was left teetering on the edge of despair, the darkness sucking her in. What lay waiting in the void? The darkness surged like a tide, curling around Sarah, pulling her deeper into its obsidian grasp. Her heart raced as she stumbled backward, adrenaline pumping through her veins like fire. The growl morphed into a sinister chuckle, echoing off the crumbling walls. It was a sound that clawed at her mind, sending shivers racing down her spine. "Emma!" she screamed, desperation spilling into tears. This place, Maplewood Memorial, had become a nightmare, a twisted maze where hope flickered feebly. The thing lurking in the shadows had begun to take shape, a mass of shadow and teeth, slithering closer with predatory grace. Each breath felt like a stone weighing her down, suffocating her fledgling courage. She turned to flee, the door feeling impossibly far away. The growl morphed again, blending with the sound of nails scraping across rusted metal, like the whispers of spirits trapped within these walls. Did they beg for release too? Or had they surrendered to whatever this horror was? As she pivoted, something cold brushed her cheek. She recoiled but caught a glimpse of herself in an old, cracked mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. Her reflection stared back, eyes wild and haunted. Was this how the lost souls looked when darkness ended them? Just as panic gnawed at her resolve, the creature lunged from the shadows, its form shifting in the dim light, revealing a grotesque visage, too much mouth, too many eyes. It wasn't just hunting. It was reveling in her fear. Sarah bolted for the door, muscles screaming, panic driving her limbs. She was nearly there when a clawed hand shot out, snagging her shoulder and yanking her backward. The grip was like ice, sending a shock through her body. She gasped as she felt the cold seep through her clothes, pulling her into a spiraling descent of despair. Struggling, she swung her arm instinctively, connecting with something solid. The creature hissed, a sound sharp enough to split her mind. With a burst of energy born from sheer terror, she wrenched free, stumbling into the corridor, her breath jagged slices in the cold air. The flickering light chased her, but the growing darkness pursued with a furious hunger. Each corner she turned felt like an eternity, whispers clawing at her sanity. What had she awoken? The truth felt like a crushing weight, pressing down, threatening to drag her under. "Emma, I'm coming," she shouted, the promise clawing at her chest, propelling her forward. She couldn't waver. There was no room for doubt. A series of rapid, desperate steps carried her, deeper fingers trailing along the peeling wall as she turned another corner. The growl pulsed like a heartbeat, fierce and relentless, feeding on her terror. Then, a ghostly light broke through the shadows, illuminating another door, this one ajar. Insight flickered with desperation. Could it hold the answers she sought? Heart thundering, she sprinted toward it, heart slamming against her ribcage like a war drum. Before she could reach for the handle, a deafening crash echoed behind her. The creature roared, fury erupting like thunder. Sarah's eyes widened, realizing she had lost precious time. She gripped the door handle, fear mixing with a flicker of hope. In this moment, she felt the pull of something familiar, a warmth that hinted at the undying love for her daughter. With a deep breath that steadied her trembling hands, she flung the door wide open. What awaited her inside the space was shrouded in shadows, but one truth flickered through the darkness. She needed to uncover it. As she stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind her, sealing her fate. What awaited Sarah in this new nightmare? Was it the way to find Emma, or just another descent into the abyss? The air inside the room shifted palpably, thick like molasses, wrapping around her as she stood at the threshold. Darkness clung to the corners like a tangible presence, whispering secrets she was not meant to know. The only light came from an old chandelier, its bulbs flickering erratically, casting errant shadows that danced and seemed to mock her. "Emma?" she called out again, the name echoing back to her, swallowed by the thick silence. Her heart hammered in her chest. She had to move, but where? The uncertainty was a predator of its own. taking a hesitant step forward. Her foot landed on something soft and wet a patch of moldy carpet. She recoiled, the squelching sound sending a surge of nausea through her. What was wrong with this place? What had happened here? A faint rustling caught her ear. Instinctively, she whipped around, straining to see through the oppressive shadows. Is someone there? The trembling of her voice betrayed her, ringing like a warning bell. Then, out of the gloom, a figure began to emerge. It was small, hunched, and moved with a jerky rhythm that was disturbingly unnatural. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as it stepped into the flickering light. It was a child, but not quite. Its skin was mottled and gray, eyes wide and hollow, devoid of any warmth. "Help me," the creature whispered, voice like gravel scraping against stone. "No, no, no." Panic surged through her again, a flood almost drowning her. "Get away." She backed up toward the door, desperate for escape. But the child leapt forward suddenly, grasping her wrist with icy fingers. "They won't let you leave. You have to help us. You must find her." A wave of confusion hit her. Help who? Was this a trick? The shadows in the corners seemed to pulse, closing in with malicious intent, as the walls creaked ominously. Emma? The name fell from her lips as if it were a lifeline. The child's features twisted a grotesque blend of desperation and something darker. Emma! She was taken to the place where the lost ones dwell. Where? Sarah's mind raced. She felt the temperature drop sharply, the chill wrapping around her like a vice. Time was running out. The dark room, it said, voice mixed with a hiss. You must hurry. The shadows are awake. With a sudden burst of strength, she yanked her arm free, stumbling back towards the door. She couldn't stand to be in this room another second. The air itself felt suffocating, heavy with despair. Will you come with me? But the child only stared, eyes wide with fear, and shook its head slowly. The shadows began to whisper louder, echoing her own fear, taunting her with thoughts of failure. Please, don't leave us. The plea rang out just as Sarah flung the door open, light flooding into the dark space. She stepped back into the corridor, heart racing, feeling the cold breath of the creature behind her. But as she turned to run, the walls behind her began to shift and close, whispering her name. Find her, find Emma, they chanted in a chorus, a mocking lullaby that pulled at her sanity. Sarah dashed down the hallway, her only focus the next door where the shadows seemed to whisper of salvation or doom. What would she find there? Was it the truth she sought, or merely another trap laid by forces beyond her understanding? As she raced forward, desperate and determined, an overwhelming fear swept over her. What if she didn't return? What if there was no way to save Emma? Her heart thundered in her ears as Sarah sprinted down the corridor, the flickering lights casting her long shadow across the damp walls. Every sound seemed amplified, the creaking floorboards, the whispers coiling around her like a noose. The darkness roared with a life of its own, urging her to turn back, to give in to the fear that gripped her throat. Emma, where are you? She gasped, her voice breaking the heavy silence, desperate. Suddenly, a door swung open at the far end of the hallway, the frame looming like a gaping mouth eager to swallow her whole. The darkness flared, revealing a dimly lit room bathed in a ghostly light. It seemed to pulse with an energy that was both inviting and terrifying. She hesitated, her instincts warning her that stepping into the unknown could seal her fate. But the thought of Emma, lost and alone, drove her forward despite her trepidation. As she reached the threshold, something gripped her ankle. She looked down, her stomach twisting. It was a hand, a skeletal, gray hand emerging from the cracks in the floor, fingers clawing at her. A chill coursed through her, sending shards of ice down her spine. No, she cried, yanking her leg free, barely managing to escape the clutching fingers. They retreated, slithering back into the darkness. She was frantic now, heart racing, fighting back the urge to scream. The shadows whispered louder, each voice a jagged edge. Help us, help her, the words echoed in her mind, gnawing at her resolve. Emma, she shouted again, yet the word felt hollow, swallowed by the oppressive weight of despair hanging in the air. Stepping into the room, Sarah was met with the sight of broken furniture strewn about, dust motes dancing lazily in the pale light. There were drawings on the wall, sketches of faces twisted in terror, their hollow eyes staring out as if pleading for release. As she scanned the room, a movement caught her eye. A figure stood in the corner, half hidden in shadow. It looked like a child, but the way it hovered, still and silent, sent a bitter taste of dread down her throat. "Emma?" she ventured, taking a step closer. The child turned slowly. It was Emma, yet it wasn't he. Her little sister's eyes were wide, but they lacked life, clouded by something deep and dark. "Sarah," the voice echoed, stretching like a rubber band about to snap. Sarah's breath hitched. "What happened to you?" The air turned electric with tension. Before Emma could respond, the temperature dropped sharply, and the shadows thickened, curling around Sarah like vines. Cold fingers brushed her neck, a reminder of the urgency she had forgotten for a moment. "Run. Sarah, you have to get out." Emma's voice cracked, suddenly urgent. "They're coming." Sarah turned, feeling the prickle of eyes upon her shadows morphing, writhing, as if trying to escape their confinement. The walls seemed to shrink, a claustrophobic grip tightening around her chest. "What do I do?" Panic surged once more, drowning her thoughts. "Find the door. The light will protect you." Emma pointed, her arm shaking. "But don't look back." The walls trembled, and a low growl reverberated from the shadows. Time stopped. With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah bolted toward the door at the end of the room. She could feel the darkness clawing at her heels, hot breath at her back. "Please, no," she cried out as she reached for the doorknob. The shadows lashed out, heavy and menacing, grasping for her. She threw open the door, collapsing into the blinding corridor light. But it wasn't over. As she slammed the door behind her, the whispers turned to screams, echoing through the air, a symphony of torment she carried within her. In the flickering light, she glanced back, just for an instant, and froze. What stood in the doorway was not Emma, but a grinning silhouette, hollow-eyed and stretching a warped hand toward her. "You can't escape us." The door slammed shut. Breathless, Sarah spun back to the corridor. Clarity washed over her, but with it came a deeper fear. Where would she go now? What awaited her in this nightmare? She had to find a way out, but the shadows were only just beginning to play their games. What if the truth was darker than she imagined? Did the way forward lead to freedom, or was it another descent into the abyss? The flickering lights buzzed above her, casting menacing shadows that danced along the walls. Sarah could feel the air swell with an uncomfortable weight, an unshakable sense that unseen eyes were tracking her every move. She pressed on, every instinct screaming to stop, yet her legs propelled her forward, the echoes of Emma's voice forever etched in her mind. "Find the light," she whispered to herself, forcing down the panic rising like bile in her throat. "You must find the light." As she turned the corner, the relentless whispering grew louder, intertwining with the sound of her racing heart. "Help us!" A chorus of fractured voices spilled into her ears, pleading and taunting. Each word wrapped around her, tightening like a noose. She squinted into the darkness ahead, where another door loomed, more ominous than the last. The walls felt alive, pulsating gently as if breathing, pushing her toward the door. She reached for the knob, her fingers trembling. Just as the cold metal met her touch, a sudden crash erupted behind her, a series of frantic footsteps pounding through the corridor, moving closer with every heartbeat. "Sarah." The voice was urgent, desperate. Her heart leapt, hope flaring momentarily. "Emma? Is that you?" Her voice cracked, and she turned, peering into the bleak hallway, shadows twisting and curling like smoke. But there was no one. The corridor lay empty, yet the feeling of dread grew heavier, pressing down on her chest. "Just go." Emma's voice echoed faintly from another distant room, but her tone was laced with panic. "Please." Without thinking, Sarah flung the door open and rushed in. The room was cold, far colder than the last. The air was thick with mildew and something more sinister, a clinging scent of decay that twisted her stomach. She was in another dimly lit space, the air tinged with the echo of muffled cries. Not far from the entrance, a circle of flickering candles sat on the floor, casting a warm glow that seemed out of place. But there was no way to escape the chill creeping up her spine. Shivering, she approached the candles, drawn to their light like a moth. Surrounding them were more drawings, illuminating the walls with grotesque images of twisted figures, mouths agape in silent screams, faces etched in torment. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her. The wooden thud echoed ominously, drowning out the whispers. Sarah, the voice was right there, thick and sickly sweet, wrapping around her mind like fog. "This isn't real," she muttered, squeezing her eyes shut. "Can't be real." But when she opened them, she found herself facing a figure, a tall, dark shape standing at the edge of the candlelight, hollow eyes fixing on her. It moved slowly, unfurling like smoke in the light, its features obscured, yet rage emanated from it. "Join us," it hissed, each word slithering into her ears, dripping with malice. Sarah stumbled back, fear prickling along her skin. The whispers spiraled again, louder and more insistent. "Help us, we need you." Desperation boiled within her. "No," she screamed, clutching her head. "You can't have me." The figure advanced, elongating, stretching toward her. Shadows flared, clawing at the edges of the candlelight. Panic surged through her, an impulse to escape flooding her senses. "Emma!" she cried out again, the name echoing in the dark. "No!" the figure roared, and the candles sputtered, casting long, flickering shadows. With a surge of fear-fueled strength, Sarah dashed past the figure, feeling the rush of cold air as she bolted toward a different door she hadn't noticed before. The whispers crescendoed into a terrifying chorus behind her, clawing for her sanity. She flung the door open, the hinges creaking in protest, and dove through. On the other side, she tumbled into a narrow stairwell. Darkness loomed above and below. Her body felt heavy with dread as she scrambled to her feet, the shadows slithering at her feet like eager serpents. But she pressed on, heart racing. Was there any escape? As she descended, a floorboard creaked ominously underfoot. Echoing laughter erupted around her, a cruel, mocking sound that sent chills skittering down her spine. "Where will you go, little light?" they whispered, the shadows curling tightly around her, drawing her deeper into the abyss. And there, at the bottom of the stairs, a faint glow flickered, a sliver of hope. But what awaited her beyond the wall of darkness standing in her way? "Don't look back," Sarah reminded herself, even as the darkness howled around her. But could she resist the siren call of despair? The glow flickered ahead, a pulse that seemed to beckon her. Sarah squinted, hope flaring briefly, igniting a spark deep within her chest. The whispers had grown distant, and for a split second, she dared to believe she might escape this nightmare. But the shadows loomed, thick and hungry, ready to swallow her whole. She reached the bottom of the staircase, gasping for breath, the cold air piercing her lungs. The light pulsed again, promising safety, but it felt deceptive. She stepped forward cautiously, her heart hammering like a frantic drum. The room beyond the threshold was a wide, concrete bunker, the walls heavy and oppressive. The light emanated from an old lantern swinging from the ceiling, casting eerie shadows that leapt and twisted alongside her. "Emma," she whispered, desperation clawing at her throat. There was no answer, only silence that pressed heavily against her ears. Then she heard a soft thud, followed by a scraping noise. Her breath caught. "Is anyone there?" The sound was closer now, a shuffling, dragging footstep. The air grew thicker, heavy with an otherworldly chill that coiled around her. The lantern flickered violently, teasing the edge of darkness. "Come to me." A voice, deep and echoing, drifted toward her. It wasn't Emma. It felt ancient, echoing through time. No. Panic flooded her veins, her instincts screaming at her to run. But her feet seemed glued to the floor. She took a deep breath and forced herself to move. Another step forward into the emptiness. The shadows stirred, writhing like living creatures, instinctively retreating from the lantern's glow. She felt eyes upon her, pricking at her skin. The atmosphere thickened with the suffocating weight of something watchful. Every muscle in Sarah's body tightened, poised for flight. And then she saw them, faces, distorted and ghastly, pressed against the walls. Ghostly figures trapped in their own damnation, their eyes wide with desperation. Help us, they whispered in unison, their mouths moving but their words fragmented, like echoes lost in time. Sarah stumbled back, heart racing. The very walls bled with anguish, the drawings she'd seen before alive and vengeful. But why were they here? Were they holdovers from Emma's presence? Or something more sinister? The voice emerged again. Join us, become one. No, I want tea, she cried out, forcing herself to remain standing against the tide of terror that threatened to swallow her whole. This wasn't just fear, it was an embedded horror, something that dug claws into her very soul. There was a sudden rustle, and the figures began to move, sliding off the walls, inching toward her. Their mouths twisted into grotesque shapes, silently mouthing her name, beckoning her closer. Help us. They lunged, their fingers stretching, the air shrieking from the pressure. With adrenaline surging, Sarah turned and bolted back to the stairwell. She could feel the cold prickle of fingertips graze her arms, a grotesque reminder of their proximity. She hurled herself up the stairs, each step causing the darkness to breathe behind her, whispering redirection into her ear, playing games with her sanity. Outside air brushed against her face as she burst into the corridor, but it felt wrong, so wrong. Standing at the end was the shadowy figure from before, waiting. It opened its mouth, darkness spilling forth, swallowing the corridor whole. Where will you go, little light? Every instinct screamed for her to flee, but instead, she froze. In the flickering shadows ahead, she recognized a glint of silver, a key, glimmering in the dimness. It dangled triumphantly from a hook on the wall. Could it be the key to her escape? Sarah's breath quickened. Would it bring her closer to freedom, or was it a trap, a lure by the whispering voices that haunted her? Take it, the chorus urged. But which path would lead her to Emma? And did the key even exist in reality, or was it just another trick of the mind? In the heart of the darkness, Sarah stood at the brink of decision, uncertainty hanging in the air like a noose. What awaited her? Once she reached for the key, would it unlock salvation or plunge her deeper into hell? The shadows writhed, pressuring Sarah as she stood paralyzed. That glint of silver was taunting her now, its promise shimmering with false hope. Each flicker of light from the lantern seemed to pulse with anticipation, urging her to make a choice. Take it, take it. The whispers crescendoed, an ominous choir promising freedom and salvation. But beneath their enticing lures lay a chill that sent a shudder through her bones. Could there be a truth worse than the one she had just fled? Her mind raced. This wasn't just a key. It felt like a gamble with unknown stakes. What if the shadows were just looking for another soul to join their wretched existence? Stranger still, what if this figure, the entity blocking her escape, was somehow tied to it? No, she whispered fiercely, the word barely breaking from her lips. The voice traveled further into the void, swallowed by the darkness. Panic clawed at her throat again, reminding her of the haunting cries she heard in the bunker. They were wrong. This decision wouldn't bring her closer to Emma. It could sever their bond forever. Wasn't the power of their connection what truly mattered? Yet, the shadows behind her stirred restlessly. Something was coming. The scraping noise returned, a slow, deliberate reminder of the dangers lurking just out of sight. Join us, the voice flowed back, heavier, deeper, surrounding her like a fog. Become one. She couldn't shake the sensation of 1,000 eyes watching her, hungry and expectant. With a deep breath, Sarah took a single step toward the shimmering key. The moment felt monumental, as if everything hinged on whether she would dare to touch it. The lantern sputtered violently, casting anxious shadows across her face. She extended her trembling hand, drawn closer by an unseen force. Just as her fingertips brushed against the cold metal, a roar erupted from the figure at the end of the corridor. Flee now, or join the forever cursed. The ground beneath her cracked and trembled with the weight of the disembodied voice. The silver key glinted dangerously in the darkness, flickering like a beacon. What if taking it meant sealing her fate? But what if leaving it behind meant she'd lose everything? Time stretched like elastic, and for a fleeting moment, dread curled in her stomach. She yanked her hand back, heart racing. "Emma!" she shouted, summoning the last vestige of courage she had left. "I won't abandon you." Her words felt like a prayer ricocheting against the dark walls. From the depths of the corridor, the shadows tightened around her, closing in like a noose. Scrapes and thuds surged with intensity, now mixed with whispers of panic from the figures she had seen just moments ago. "Help us!" they cried, a guttural despair echoing in her ears. "You're just like us, trapped." With horror gripping her heart, Sarah leaped back from the fantasizing shadows and darted for the exit. The figure roared in fury, the very essence of darkness bleeding into the corridor, consuming the light and the air. "Run!" The voice, now laced with a frantic edge, shattered the silence around her. Sarah tore down the corridor, darting through the gauzy remains of shadows. She could feel the chill of the spirits enveloping her, yearning to pull her into the inky void. Just as she neared another set of stairs, a fresh horror unfurled before her. An alternate path opened, twisting and dark, the light of the lantern flickering weakly behind her. Between the corridor that begged for her attention and the stairs that still led to hope, there was no time to hesitate. "Where will you go, little light?" She faced the looming shadows one last time, every instinct telling her to escape, but dread lay heavily on her shoulders. The chilling reality settled over her. Was this a choice between a path to freedom or a deeper descent into whatever horror awaited her? Caught between fractured pathways, Sarah's heart thundered painfully in her chest. What truth would she discover if she dared to step into the unknown? Would she find salvation or her final doom? Heart pounding, Sarah took a step forward into the twisting path, shadows dancing with the flickering light of the lantern behind her. The choice felt impossible. One direction offered the hope of freedom, while the other seemed to open into an abyss of despair. "Choose wisely," the figure's voice echoed, a sinister sneer lacing every word. Its presence loomed larger, shadows pooling at its feet like ink bleeding on paper. It seemed amused, reveling in her fear. With a deep breath, she forced herself into the dark corridor. The moment she crossed the threshold, the air thickened, pressing against her chest like a heavy weight. Faint whispers echoed through the space, their urgency increasing, drowning out her thoughts. "Leave while you still can." It was almost a wail, a plea wrapped in caution. Sarah hesitated, its warning seeping into her veins. But something ahead beckoned, an eerie curiosity blending with dread. As she moved deeper, the flicker of her lantern revealed jagged walls that pulsated and throbbed, as if the darkness was alive, breathing, waiting. Strange markings were etched into the stone scratches, symbols resembling claw marks, and words that curled back upon themselves. They whispered secrets, stories of those who had tread this path before, secrets she dared not unravel. "Help us!" A chorus of voices materialized, each one blending into the next. The anguish in those cries was palpable, the shadows scarred with memories of regret and despair. "You're one of us now," she pressed onward, the darkness closing in, fingers grazing the cool, damp walls, searching for something familiar, something real. The haunting echoes of ghostly whispers wrapped around her like chains, tugging her deeper into the corridor's heart. Suddenly, she stumbled, falling into the depths of shadows that shifted and coiled around her legs like serpents. Panic surged, and she leapt back, heart racing. But no amount of frantic movement could shake off the grip of whatever was lurking in this twisted space. The walls seemed to pulse with an insatiable hunger, urging her onward. Then she saw it, a glimmer in the darkness, something reflecting light. It shone brighter than the lantern, a silver silhouette that flickered with a seductive glow. It was another key, shimmering wildly, dancing just out of reach. Was this the answer or another trap? "Take it, Sarah," the whispers pleaded, their voices laced with desperation. "Unlock your fate." But as she reached out, a terrible roar erupted behind her, echoing through the corridor. The figure's shadow surged forth, a mass of darkness intent on swallowing her whole. "You're too late," it bellowed. "You will never leave." With adrenaline blazing in her veins, Sarah turned on her heel. The shadows tangled around her, clamoring like a chaotic storm. She raced back the way she came, the sound of her own heart pounding echoing in her ears, drowning out the cacophony. Closer, the figure loomed, now an amorphous mass, rushing to reclaim its next victim. "Not again. I want to be trapped," she shouted, desperation ripping through her voice. Sarah hurled herself into the endless corridor that promised fear, every instinct urging her to find the light once more. The entity pursued her, its cold, chilling presence distorting every step. Just as she breached the threshold of the staircase, she could feel the entity's breath clawing at her back. The stairs had to lead somewhere, anywhere but here. But when she leaped onto the first step, the ground beneath buckled, revealing a gaping maw of darkness ready to devour her whole. "Will you sacrifice your only chance?" The shadows howled, laughter weaving through the despair. Fear thrummed painfully in Sarah's chest. Would she descend into the depths of madness or seize the fleeting moment of escape? "Emma," she whispered, feeling the weight of all her choices pressing down. Before she could gather her thoughts, the staircase began to tremble. Did she dare step into oblivion, or could she find a way to escape this nightmare? As the shadows purged ever closer, the answer loomed just beyond reach, shrouded in darkness. What awaited her if she let the lingering terror swallow her whole? The darkness enveloped Sarah, a suffocating weight that twisted around her like a puppet master controlling her every move. The monstrous presence loomed behind her, its growl rumbling deep within her, merging fear with the primal instinct to escape. Time felt elusive, slipping like sand through her fingers as she faced the raging maw of the unknown. "Emma!" she screamed, forcing the name from her lips, rooted in love and desperation. Memories of laughter and warmth flashed through her mind, bolstering her resolve. She had to find her. With the creature's growl echoing menacingly in her ears, Sarah charged up the trembling stairs, her heart pounding against her ribs like a wild drum. Each step felt like a leap of faith, but there was no turning back now. She sprinted, the shadows at her back clawing to drag her down into the abyss, whispering promises of despair. Suddenly, the ground beneath her trembled violently, loosening stones and debris. She stumbled but caught herself, glancing back just long enough to see tendrils of darkness writhe like serpents, reaching for her ankles. The entity roared, a cacophonous sound that echoed through her very bones. "You belong to us." "No." She fueled her legs with raw adrenaline, pushing herself faster. The door at the top of the stairs loomed closer, a fragile barrier to freedom. The shadows shrieked, an indignant wail that shattered the air, and desperation wrapped around Sarah's heart. She wouldn't let them take her. She wouldn't lose Emma. The memory of her daughter's laughter anchored her as she scrambled up the last few steps, feet pounding, breath sharp and frantic. She reached the door, trembling fingers grasping the handle, and yanked it open. Light spilled into the dark corridor, flooding her senses bright, blinding, alive. For a fraction of a second, everything seemed still, suspended in time. But the darkness roared behind her, a living entity determined to swallow her whole. With one final push, Sarah stepped into the light, cascading out of darkness and into the blinding hope of the unknown. The air transformed around her, warm and fresh, laden with scents of pine and open grass. Confusion rippled through her. She blinked, taking in the familiar surroundings. The Maplewood Park lay before her, untouched by the horrors she'd just fled. "Emma?" she called, heart pounding with dread and hopeful desperation. Stepping fully into the sun-drenched day, she felt the warmth embrace her. The park was alive with laughter, children playing, couples picnicking, life bursting at the seams. Then she saw a flicker at the edge of the park, a figure standing beneath the old oak tree. Instinctively, Sarah knew. It was Emma. "Mom!" she cried, joy illuminating her face like sunlight breaking through the clouds. Everything else melted away as Sarah raced toward her daughter, arms outstretched as if the distance between them would collapse. Time had lost its sting. The warmth of love enveloped them both as they collided into a long-overdue embrace. "I thought I lost you," Sarah gasped, tears streaming down her face. "Never," Emma whispered, as if their bond was an unbreakable thread woven through the tapestry of time. "I always knew you'd come for me." As they embraced, the shadows receded into the depths of the Maplewood Hospital, murmuring their dark melodies. But now they held no more power. Sarah's breath steadied, and the terror of that wretched place faded like dust blown away by the wind. The sun hung high in the sky, casting playful rays through the trees, as Sarah finally felt lightness bloom in her chest. She had faced the depths of fear, brushed against darkness, and emerged shaking, yes, but triumphant. "Let us go home," she said, tightening her hold on Emma, heart full with the quiet knowledge that she would never let fear govern her life again. Together, they stepped into a world drenched in light, leaving the haunting shadows behind. And as they walked back toward their home, hand in hand, the Maplewood Hospital stood silent, binding its secrets within, another reminder of the unyielding bond between mother and daughter that darkness would certainly never touch again. Never. Now, before you go, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss exclusive stories like this. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and let us know you loved this conclusion. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. What do you think will happen next? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this finale. Your support means everything to us.